Welcome back to Creativity and Luxury with Dr. N. I'm Dr. Namin, and today we delve into the allure and psychology of luxury brands, examining the intricate dynamics of consumer behavior and the profound desire for exclusive products. Have you ever wondered why certain brands captivate our imagination, or why luxury holds such a magnetic appeal? Our conversation today unpacks these mysteries, shedding light on the powerful forces that shape our tastes, preferences, and concepts of exclusivity. Prepare to uncover insights that lie at the heart of luxury, a world where psychology and aspiration meet. Joining me today is Professor Ben Voyer, the distinguished Cartier Chair of Behavioral Science and former L'Oréal Professor of Creativity Marketing. Ben is also a contributor to Forbes and serves as a visiting professor in psychology and behavioral science at the London School of Economics. Together, we'll journey into the psyche of luxury consumer, revealing many valuable insights. So without further ado, let's start. Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining me today. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, and let's get started. So please take us to the beginning. You know, you've studied psychology, you've gone into consumer behavior, you've worked with various prominent luxury brands. Please take us through your journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's a real pleasure to be on this podcast. And I think my journey is the journey of someone that was always excited to understand why people behave in certain ways, and especially why they do so in areas where their behaviors appear a bit paradoxical. So, for instance, I was early on in my career interested in healthcare and why people make sometimes decisions about their own health that is detrimental towards their well-being in the future. And then I got really interested in luxury as well, because I guess by definition, luxury is something that you don't need yet. You're prepared to save a lot of money or buy it, even if you're not necessarily able to afford it. And so that led me to kind of, after starting working as a marketing practitioner, being interested in studying in more depth the reasons why and how people behave, which is what I did. And then since started this journey, I've been able to work in academia as a researcher, currently holding the Cartier Research Chair in behavioral science at ESCP Business School, but also working in various capacities in educating future leaders in the field of behavioral science, and also working with brands in various consulting ways. So I get kind of a 360 view on the field of consumer behavior and luxury management, both from an academic perspective, but also from the perspective of a consultant and someone that collaborates with brands.
That's very interesting that you're combining the two fields of psychology and business studies or management and consumer behavior. And something that was very notable that we saw during the pandemic is that despite the drop in sales for all other industries and brands, the luxury industry remained quite resilient. What's the secret behind that?
Typically, if you look at the academic literature, luxury brands are doing well for quite a few reasons. So first of all, they're thought to be counter-cyclical. So they're actually thought to do well when the economy isn't doing well, and perhaps less sensitive to big boom cycles, although they typically also do well. But this is one of the facts that we know about luxury brands in the luxury industry, is that they tend to do well when the rest of the economy isn't doing well. The reason behind that is typically twofold. It's first of all, there is always a fringe of the population that in a way still does well and okay when the rest of the world and the economy isn't going well. And the second is that luxury brands and luxury goods in particular fulfill a quite important status role, status signaling role. That means that people still want to use these brands to kind of feel better about themselves, or signal that even though things might be tough in the economy or in the world, like during COVID, they're actually able to still send these signals that they're occupying a high social role, and that they have the means or financial means to buy luxury items. So the combination of these two factors means that luxury brands typically do better, and are very resilient up to a certain point to economic downturns.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting that it's anti-cyclical. I read your article in the Forbes that you published recently, talking about how luxury brands are diversifying and becoming brands of everything. I mean, what's the strategic intent behind that, do you think?
Well, when it comes to luxury brands, there are several ways of growing. One way of growing is just to sell more of the same product. But what it means is that you end up kind of diluting the exclusivity of the brand, because you're making more of the same product, and eventually it means you're reaching more customers. But that also means that if you reach more customers with the same products, you end up losing in terms of perceived exclusivity. In other words, or in very mundane words, you become more common, you become less special. The strategy behind luxury brands of everything is that luxury brands can and need to grow by trying to reach out to more customers or the same customers, but with other means of expressing luxuriousness and other means to express what a brand is about. And so if you think about the biggest brands in the world, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Hermes, or Chanel, they reach a point where all of them are really big in the handbag, or kind of, Louis Vuitton, like canvas bag category. But at some point, there are only so many of these that you can grow. In order to grow beyond that, and in order to grow in a way that you're not saturating the market, which, by the way, is a real risk. When you think about Louis Vuitton, for instance, the real risk is that there is a saturation of demand for their canvas, their flagship product, just because it's ubiquitous, it's available everywhere. So one of the strategies that brands have is to become brands of everything, where they try to diversify the category so that the original product category that made them so strong and resilient becomes a lesser, if not a minority, of their revenues. So typically going to homeware and accessories, going to the direction of hotels, going to cruise or else, is one of the strategies that luxury brands have to keep on growing while preserving the authenticity and uniqueness of their brand proposition.
Yes, and then that creates a sort of a tension, because there's a big tension behind or between wanting to remain exclusive versus wanting to diversify and capture more markets. I wonder if that will eventually, dilute the brand, and that takes me, into, you mentioned, LVMH group, who recently appointed Pharrell Williams. What does that actually signal?
Well, it signals that the pure kind of design element of their brand is not necessarily what matters the most these days. All of the brands that we know, like Dior and Chanel, especially, are where they are because they had some breakthrough designers. But in 2024, it becomes not so much about the design, but about the creative appeal of a brand and a product. And so we see that brands that have been very resilient over the years, like Hermes, has had famous designer collaborations, but unlike Chanel and unlike Dior, for instance, or Louis Vuitton, they have never really relied on a key figure as a designers. They've always been more about the quality, about the product, very much in line with the quiet luxury trend. And that's the kind of thing that seem to be capturing the essence of the moment. So having people that can express creativity, but that are not necessarily design experts. And that's what Pharrell Williams is about. He's someone that expresses creativity, is a very smart person and knows to capture the spirit of the time, but is not someone that was born and educated as a creative designer. He's just someone that knows how to entertain and create events and create atmosphere, which are then translated into products.
And on the other side, we also have the luxury brands that maintain as exclusive as possible. And what comes to mind is Chanel. What are your thoughts on Chanel? How do you think they managed in the world of diversification in luxury? They managed to stay so exclusive.
Chanel's got it's a very interesting brand. First of all, it's actually a women's brand, and this is one of the strengths of Chanel. Chanel could easily branch into menswear, and there would be a market for that, but it would not be the same brand anymore. For as long as it's existed, and it's coming to in a not too distant future to a century of existence, it's been a brand incarnating innovation in design for women. And I think this particular aspect of Chanel is what sets it apart from other brands that caters to every possible demographic. And timelessness is also where the brand develops its appeal, is by having products that stand the test of time and that remains relevant to young people in the modern world. So if you talk, I've had extensive conversation with people that have a lot of experience working with Chanel, and they'll tell you that what's interesting about Chanel is that Chanel has had iconic products for young people, so people that are aspiring customers, but the products are not necessarily the same over the years and over the decades. So if you go back in the 1980s, for instance, what mattered to young people was to have a Chanel coat and the kind of iconic, quilted type vest was what you wanted to have as a young person in the 80s. Fast forward 40 years, handbags are now more prominent and are what young customers aspire to. But in fact, it doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that the brand keeps an item or a few items that are at the heart of the desires of young people. And if you can, for every generation of luxury customers, kind of anchor them, hook them on an iconic product, then your brand keeps on being young and keeps on renewing its customer demographics. The risk is that your core product ages with your target customer. And if that's the case, that's how you become an old brand and you lose touch with the zeitgeist, with the spirit of the times.
In the face of outlet villages, selling luxury brands and lots of diversification and, many changing dynamics within the luxury, I feel like perhaps also Hermès has followed suit also in the sense that it's remained exclusive. What are your thoughts on the movement towards quiet luxury?
It definitely reflects the spirit of the time. It's been captured well in Successions and a lot of high profile streaming shows and so on. But in a sense, what quiet luxury is about is the product more than the signaling aspect of the product. So it's more about the quality of the material, the finishing touches, and the importance that it has in the product, more so than visible branding, like what was the case, I would say, in the 2000s and the 2010s. It's been the core, I would say, core know-how of major luxury brands like Hermès, like Loro Piana, for instance. And I think perhaps with the advance of kind of mass luxury and the industrialization of luxury with more and more stores, and the fact that 50 years ago you would have needed to go to big European cities or very few non-European cities to actually buy luxury goods. Today, you can buy them anywhere in the world. And so I think, when you talk about exclusivity, you've got several ways of creating exclusivity. You can create exclusivity with price point. If I have a jumper that is priced 5,000 euros, it's going to be more exclusive than if it's a jumper that is priced at 1,000 euros. If I have a jumper that you can only buy in one store in the world, it's more exclusive than a jumper that you can buy in 500 stores in the world. And I think, again, if I've got very specific premium materials, that makes them more exclusive because there aren't many producers and manufacturers and designers that will be able to work with these. So I think for me, quad luxury is just refocusing the industry away from the era of fast development that we've witnessed in the last 50 years and putting back the product as the core of the value proposition in consumer behavior when you think of it and you apply it to luxury.
Your core area is consumer behavior. So I have always thought about and read several categorizations where they say that there's not one type of luxury consumer or high net worth luxury consumer, that, some studies have divided it into 6, some more. What are your thoughts? Do you actually categorize different types of luxury consumers?
To be honest, it's very difficult to have a typology that reflects more than a specific market or a specific brand. The reason being that when it comes to luxury customers, especially at the higher end, people are more and more unique. So it becomes very difficult to actually be able to have some kind of, I would say, precise typologies the way you can do and have in FMCG, for instance. It becomes more possible if you're thinking about the lower end of luxury, so what people call sometimes accessible luxury and so on. But categorizing luxury customers is only helpful to help you understand what are the different motives that are and drive consumer behavior. So, for instance, one of the typologies I like is by Han Nunes and Dress, and in their 2010 Journal of Marketing article, they create a kind of simple but relevant 2x2 typology where they look at people that have high need for status and low need for status, and people that have wealth and high wealth and low wealth, very little money. And that typology comes up with 4 kind of names for these segments. So people are high in terms of need for status, but that are low in wealth, that are called the posers. So typically that go for fake products or counterfeited products, or maybe these days use kind of secondhand products, perhaps because of the lower entry point, more affordable. Then you have the people that are high need for status and high in wealth, typically the kind of new rich typology. Then you have people that are low in need for status and low in wealth. Typically, they call them proletarians, but people that show little interest in luxury. And then you have the interesting category of people that are rich, wealthy, high in wealth, but have a low need for status. And these are what Han Nunes and Reyes call the patricians. And the patricians are the kind of old rich, if you want to oppose them to the new rich. They are people that are more interested in what we call nowadays quiet luxury, because they care more about the quality of something rather than purely the branding and the status signaling that goes with products.
From the point of view of the ultra high wealth consumer, I would imagine that the definition for them of luxury would be quite different than somebody who is middle income. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, I would say, it's again, first of all, it's difficult because it's not like there are a lot of studies, because it's just very difficult to reach out to people that are, let's say, ultra high net worth. It's not like you can just, some market research agencies claim that they have access to some, but and they may well, but it's just difficult to first of all have data sets that are meaningful, and second, at that end, people are so unique and different that it's hard to find generalizable patterns and traits. If anything, the only thing that you can generalize and say is that all ultra high net worth consumers are different. Perhaps, but what they have in common is that very fact that they are very different, and their motivation for consumption may be very different. It may be very difficult to have patterns, and when often people expect ultra high net worth consumers to behave in a kind of very predictable way, so that if you're wealthy enough to only wear, I don't know, designer clothes, you probably only, and if you can pay like thousands of euros per night for a hotel, then you might expect everything to be at that level. But it's much more complex than that. In some research I was doing, I was talking to people that buy very expensive jewelry, like multiple millions of euros, and these are people that are also very happy to wear fast fashion dresses. So just because you're able to wear some of the most precious jewelries in the world doesn't mean that everything you do and wear is at that level. So it's just to show you the complexity of this type of the population, and that's why at that stage you're very much back at the kind of human touch of understanding the customers and working very closely with them. It's much more personal than any form of mass marketing and mass market research, the way you could do it if you would be marketing even kind of entry level luxury products that we've talked about earlier.
Ben, I follow your work as an academic. I've read lots of your studies that you've done, and I see that you've currently launched quite an active research center on Gen Zs, which are not so well understood. So do you see that they have a different pattern of consumption or behavior?
So what's interesting about Gen Z is that Gen Z is, I would say, is less stereotypical than many expect. And when it comes to luxury is not only about the price point, or not only about the the fact it's a luxury brand, but the kind of exclusivity that can be created around scarcity, so very few products, is an aspect of what Gen Z sees as luxury. And that's something, when we did research the topic of luxury with the Gen Z Observatory, that for me was very interesting and surprising, that a limited kind of drop of Off-White maybe back in the days, or other brands today, will be perceived as a real luxury just because it is a limited edition. So I think that's one of the things that Gen Z has in mind when it comes to luxury. The other thing that Gen Z has is that they research much more than previous generations, and they really look at the value, including the long-term value that an item and a brand have. So they're much more likely, when they buy a product, to know that this is an item that they could resell on platforms, or they could swap or else. But they do so less with the heart and perhaps more with the kind of rational, almost kind of business mindset that you could have when it comes to the buying process. So very interesting and very eager as well to get onto the luxury consumption ladder very early. So that's not uncommon, and that's something you find in with previous generations. But the idea that the kind of education to luxury is something that comes early. In your teens, in your late teens, trying to get an item, not necessarily a product category like soft leather goods and so on, but also something like a perfume or makeup or else, is something that is kind of a rite of passage for younger generations.
Do you feel that culture plays any role in that at all?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, culture is a big driver of generational differences, and I think in a way, generational differences are perhaps even stronger in collectivist cultures. We see a lot in our work when we have some of researchers that are from collectivist cultures, Asian cultures in particular, where they say that Gen Z expresses and is less conformist to social norms and values than previous generations. So there is a marked contrast and a real willingness of younger customers and younger Gen Z to really express their uniqueness and to do so even more so in collectivist cultures. And that's something that we see across the board in Western, but especially in collectivist cultures.
And then we have the circular economy and the sharing economy that you mentioned at the beginning. Are they driving that? Are they all in for secondhand sharing economy and, circulating the products?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something, so in terms of attitudes, Gen Z really, really value the environmental aspects. That's super important. It's also something that is translated into behavior. So you'll find that most Gen Zers will have an item or a significant part of their wardrobe, from a third to 50%, that actually is upcycled or recycled in one way or another. So it's something that is now becoming the norm, and the stigma attached to it has dropped, and it's really seen as something that is cool to do. So not only is it destigmatized, but it's actually now seen as something positive.
So Ben, I think, just to before we close this off, we can't avoid talking about sustainability and luxury. Luxury brands are always under fire for being wasteful and harmful to the environment. What are the big moves that are happening at the moment in this space?
Well, the industry is actually more, it's a thorny question, because if you think about luxury products, in some fields such as or some part of the industry like jewelry is actually recyclable, sometimes almost to the perfection and almost infinitely. Gold can be melted and remelted with only losing a tiny fraction of the metal in the process of doing so. Stones can be repolished and adapted to new creations. So I think the issue is more that the industry wants to be at the forefront and doing things, but they want to do so in a quiet way. And if you're a fast fashion brand, you try and communicate about the fact that your brand is trying to do something about the environment. If you're a luxury brand, you'll do whatever you can, but you won't necessarily connect with customers on that topic. Customers will be expecting that you will do things the best you can, but this is something that you won't be talking about. So the industry deserves more credit than it gets, because it does a lot of things, but it does a lot of things in the background, because I'm not going to say it's a taboo topic, but it's a topic that is not the kind of topic that brands want to engage into, because it's assumed by consumers that luxury brands will do the right things. That's definitely something we found in our research when more than 10 years ago, we started working on the topic of luxury and sustainability. What we found is that customers, in a way, A, didn't want to ask themselves the question, and B, thought that luxury ought to do well, and that, if they're paying the price they're paying, part of it is the quality and the service and everything, but part of it also should be that it's doing well in terms of its sustainability commitments.
I mean, they can't be called sustainable if staff and employees are not treated well. Is there any prominent well-being programs that are taking place internally in those brands?
Well, most brands don't really communicate about this kind of thing, so it's hard to know. But, and this is just a personal opinion, but the kind of stress that you experience in a busy fast fashion store on the high street will be quite high if you think about the pace of busy days, like Saturdays in Europe and so on. compared to what you get in a luxury boutique. So I do think that, generally speaking, brands are the forefront. Some luxury brands are starting to talk about 4-day weeks for retail employees because they know that it is hard to recruit a good sales associate. I think, generally speaking, brands are really trying to do the best they can on that topic. But again, they do so in a quiet way, which reflects the fact that luxury brands know that they're expected to do well, and they don't necessarily want to communicate about this topic because this is not the primary reason why customers would be interested in the brand.
Thank you very much, Ben. That's been quite insightful. And I look forward to connecting with you on an academic level as well. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much. It was great to meet you as well, Namin. And I look forward to the episode and comments and so on.